Amendment 88 at the desk.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 88, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Sherman of California.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
American gas prices are too high. The pressure is on this Congress to do something about it. President Biden has done something about it by releasing oil at a strategic time from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And gas prices are down from their peak. But Americans want more. But they want real action, and instead they get what is nothing more than a 2-day fraud on this House floor, a bill that would do absolutely nothing to reduce oil prices or gas prices. And yet, by spending 2 days on this floor, by making this the bill of the week, we fool the American people into thinking that Congress is doing something. Now, how utterly meaningless is this bill? It will do nothing to increase oil production in the United States, for it calls only for a plan to be created, but not necessarily implemented. And it implies that it would do something to increase oil production, but not for well more than a year after the crisis began, any spike in oil prices. And finally, even if more oil is produced in the United States, it'll be exported and will lower the world price perhaps by a penny. This is a messaging bill. Its message is to attack President Biden, who's the only one who has actually done something to reduce oil prices. So let's look at what this bill does. It calls for a plan. Well, if the administration wants to give us a plan, they'd give us a plan. Washington is filled with plans. The American Petroleum Institute has a plan. Everybody's got a plan. So we draft another plan. What does that do? Now, it forces the administration to write a plan about leasing more land for oil drilling. They're free to list parcels where everybody knows there's no oil and nobody wants to bid. If they don't want to do a plan, that's the plan they'll give us. But let's say they give us the plan that the majority seems to want. They can write the plan, accompany with a letter explaining that they think it won't reduce oil prices, that it's bad for the environment, and therefore they're not going to implement it. So now we have a plan that's similar to what they want and a letter saying why it won't be implemented. This is what we offer the American people. If we're going to have a bill that requires a plan, we ought to adopt this amendment that offers the administration a chance to create a different kind of plan, a plan to prohibit or limit exports. The illustration of how important this is can be seen just north of our border. Canada produces twice as much oil as they consume, and their consumers are paying $2 a gallon more than we're paying. So producing more oil inside your country doesn't seem to lower oil prices for those living to the north of the United States. Why? Because the oil is simply exported at the world price. Now that guarantees, if we actually produced more oil in the United States and exported it, more profits for oil companies, but not a penny of reduction at the price. If instead we had a plan to limit or prohibit exports, we would lower certainly the price of natural gas, and I believe that under many circumstances we would reduce the price of oil and gasoline paid for by the American people. So to come to this floor with a bill requiring a plan to be added to the hundreds of existing plans that already exist, that requires an administration to create a plan that the majority tells us the administration doesn't want to create, allows the administration to create a plan that they wouldn't like, allows the administration to create a plan that they would like and then refuse to implement it, and then tell the American people that you're doing something to lower the price of gasoline now. But even if we produced more oil, and let's point out, we're going to produce more oil in this country in 2023 than any other year in our history. So this is a message bill that's sending a false message. We are going to produce more oil in 2023 than any other year. But even if we did lease more land, and even if they did drill on it, that is a response that might affect us in 2025. Why don't we have something that will lower gas prices now? So, if we want to engage in this process of telling the American people that we're doing something or that we would do something, but it's the other party's fault, then for God's sakes, bring forward a bill that, if enacted, which of course won't happen, but if enacted, would actually do something. This bill will not increase oil production in the United States, and oil production in the United States, if exported, will do nothing to help the American consumer. Please vote for my amendment. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. For what purposes, gentleman from South Carolina?
Mr. Chair, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman's recognized for 5 minutes.
You know, the education of my colleagues continues. A plan? The administration is in violation of the law that requires a 5-year drilling plan on the OCS. I was on the MMS 5-year OCS drilling study committee. I know what the law is. The administration needs to create a 5-year plan for drilling offshore on federal lands. That's a plan. You know, talked about oil and how we shouldn't import oil. There's all kinds of different oil, heavy, light. Our refineries are set up to take a certain kind of oil. We're called a net exporter when we exceeded the demand in this country. We had a surplus, so we were able to export it. Net exporter because we're still going to import oil because our refineries are set up to take that kind of oil and not necessarily the oil that's produced here. You mentioned our neighbors to the north in Canada producing a lot more oil. They don't have refineries up there to meet their demand. They need to send that oil somewhere to be refined into all the miraculous products that come out of a barrel of hydrocarbon. It doesn't just produce diesel fuel and gasoline. And so they've got to send that oil somewhere. But the stoppage of the Keystone XL pipeline kept that oil from coming to the United States of America. Guess what? They've got to send it somewhere else. They've got to send it overseas to be refined somewhere. That's the reason that Canada may pay higher prices for gasoline. We have the solution. Bring that oil here. Let us refine it. Let's put American workers to work at refineries. We hadn't built a refinery in this country, and I don't know when. We can meet a lot of different goals in this country and globally by refining more of that product here. That's a plan for you. Keystone Pipeline is important for our refineries and the energy sector and for our allies, both north and south, in Mexico and Canada. We can be North American energy secure. We can actually be hemispherically energy secure by working with our colleagues. You know, H.R. 21 is about the SPR, about requiring non-emergency use to be accompanied by a plan to produce American oil resources. There's your plan. This amendment, by requiring a plan to limit oil imports, this amendment aims to harm American families by imposing costly trade restrictions into the global market for oil, which will drive up fuel prices. OPEC doesn't play by these rules. America is the top producer in the world, and increasing energy production leads to more security, price stability, especially when prices are set by OPEC in the global market. This amendment undermines the purpose of the bill and undermines American energy affordability and security. So I urge a no vote from my colleagues, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.